We posted the last video less than 2 weeks ago. There's been over 5,000 views. The overall reaction from the audience has been spectacular. Everybody really enjoyed your tank. It's not often that you see 400-gallon Reef. And I think this time I've asked the audience to ask a few questions, and we'll kick off this video session with some Q&A. And for anyone that has asked for more eye candy, for more video from the sides of the tank, you'll get to experience it in this video. So with that said, I will start with the question that I wanted to ask myself, and that is, how old is the tank?
This tank in this location is 15 years old. It was upgraded from my 120 to this, so the rock came from the 120. Some of the corals and stuff, and then added to it, obviously.
So 15 years old, and are you worried at all about the silicone or the structure?
Knock on wood for now. That's always a worry when you have a tank, but you know, hopefully it should hold.
All right, well, thank you, and with that, let's kick it off. So I'm gonna name the name of the people on YouTube when they wanted to share that. Okay. So the first person is Justin Thibodeau. He's in the process of building an extra large aquarium, 7 feet by 4 feet, and he's really concerned about the height, because last time you said this is 30 inches, and he is wondering, was 30-inch height worth the trouble? That is the first question. So can you elaborate on that?
Notice my arms aren't very long, but I love the viewing area of 30 inch. It gives you, I think it's more spectacular than a 24 or 28 or whatever. I use tongs to reach to the bottom, and there's times where my nose is in the water because it's deep down, but I think it's worth it myself personally for the overall look of the tank.
So if you were to do another tank, or you would still go with 30
Absolutely,
inches?
absolutely.
Okay, Justin, so it's, the answer is it's worth it. And by the way, how high is this from the floor?
The stand itself is short because I'm not a very tall guy, so I purposely wanted to look when standing right into the tank. The stand itself is only, I think, 24 inches if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. That's
right?
what it looks like.
And just enough to have my closed loop. And some storage under there, and it's not designed for a sump, obviously, because everything's in the basement. That's why it's shorter. Steel stand, just skirted with wood.
Nice. Well, I actually do enjoy low stands personally, because most of the time when I want to enjoy the tank, I want to be sitting on a couch, and I don't want to be looking up and seeing the lighting and whatnot. Wiz Reef is asking, do you have a generator for power outage?
I do have a generator. It's not a full standby. It's 5,000 watt that sits in my garage, always ready. I do have a battery backup and an air pump on the tank that can buy me a little bit of time to get home to start up the generator and get it running.
Nice. So, can you elaborate a little bit on the batteries? So,
it's the battery backup is for an Ecotech. It's an Ecotech battery backup, and it's on my MP60 that will just keep the circulation going in the tank. And there's an air pump that is there also. So once the power goes off, it turns on.
Ah, okay. And do you test it at all?
Yeah.
So,
occasionally, not as often as I should probably.
Nice. User Bearded Flip Flop is asking, what do you feed your tanks? They look huge.
I feed nori occasionally, not that often. It's mostly pellets and flakes, New Life Spectrum, Omega-1. If I see a particular, 2 little fishies, and that's basically it. Some PEI, brine shrimp and thing once in a while, not very often. And that's it. But they're fed very frequently through the feeders in the tank.
Gotcha. So, and overall, there's enough food for all of the fish in the tank, right?
So more than.
Nice. Next, Norb Poggio is asking, he's saying beautiful tank and system, which is true. He would like to get more detail on the heating system. He's planning a 400-gallon and would not want to use 12,000 watts. 1,200 watts of electricity.
Basically, it's a closed loop off my tankless hot water heater. hot water heater has to be able to have water coming in and out on a loop. It's then controlled by the apex and a separate thermostat also. So both thermostats have to make at the same time for it to come on. Right? It's a redundancy so that if one fails shut, it won't just overheat the tank constantly. And that powers a circulation pump which sucks from the hot water tank, puts it through that loop that you saw in the sump, that red loop that goes around in the sump and then back to the tank.
Gotcha. Well, and do you think the savings are substantial in terms of electricity?
You know what? I never really checked, but it's just that every time when I took metal halides off and when I had a whole bunch of other T5s on, I would go down and you'd see the heaters on like almost constantly.
For sure.
It pissed me off, so I decided, let's do this to use gas rather than electricity to try and heat it.
Makes perfect sense. Huron Aquatics is wondering what kind of PAR are you trying to get on your tank? Can you elaborate on what do you think your PAR is?
I have never actually measured it myself personally. Ecotech did measure at one point in time a few years back, and I think at the top it was somewhere in the 300 to 400 range, and then down at the bottom it was about 175, 150, but I don't remember the exact readings.
And probably with metal halides, at some point you may have even had higher PARs, especially in some places.
Back when I had two 400s and a 250 on there.
Oh, two 400s. That's a lot of PAR.
Yep.
What about your turnover flow rate?
I run an Abyss, right, which feeds these two, right, and I'm figuring I have probably about, I would say about almost 3,000 gallons an hour coming from the sump and then going back to the sump. Within the tank, I have two MP60s and there are 3 M1 pumps on a closed loop. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's a lot.
So, well, and his next, what about the flow around the sump area?
Well, the 3,000 gallons that comes here goes through the prop system, through the sump, and then back up again. In the prop systems, I have one with an MP40. The other one has a max spec gyri, and then in my refugium, I have two MP10s.
Gotcha. Yep. I remember those. Next question by Huron Aquatics is really good one. So, if you could do it again, anything you would change or improve? This is personally, I really like that question.
You know what? There's not too much. I like the system the way it runs. You're always trying to find something that will make it better. I like the way with the sea swirls how I get the random flow throughout the tank. With the closed loop, it's pretty good. There's not too much. The only other thing that I would have done maybe is to try and redo the hood where I could hide the piping for the sea swirls, right? Because with an open hood, then you can see everything, right? But I don't know if it's feasible, right? It works pretty good the way it is.
And in terms of dimensions, would you have added an extra couple of inches here and there, or?
Well, initially I wanted a 36 tank.
Yes.
Right, and I squeezed out another 4 inches.
Which you don't regret, by the way.
I don't regret at all. There's a window on that side, right? So going any wider, no, I couldn't here in this house. Any higher, it's what I like, and it would come out way too far. So for the house, this is the right size.
This is perfect.
Yeah. So I'm happy with it.
Nice. And next question follows from that is anything you wish you hadn't done?
Hadn't done?
Yes.
That's not really, just the mistakes that you make.
Gotcha.
Not in the planning on the execution of the whole system. It's just that you do stupid things sometimes. You leave something on, you have a flood, whatever. And that's why I have all the filtration in the basement, because I've never really had a flood up here.
Yes,
where it would damage
super
the
important.
floors
So
and, you know, and the basement's unfinished, so it goes right to the floor drain, and that's basically it.
Right, and I'm not sure if we talked about it last time, but I believe you've reinforced the floor for this.
Absolutely,
tank, right?
absolutely. There's, I doubled up on the joists. My joists run this way, so I doubled up on the joists there. I've put steel beams in the corners to support it.
Smart.
And you know, it's solid. It's not going to move.
Nice, nice. So there were quite a few questions from here on. He didn't see the quarantine tank for fish. So what's your process for adding either fish or corals to the tank?
I don't quarantine. Most of my fish that I get come from specific trusted suppliers. Most of my fish come from Reef Wholesale. My shout out to my buddy Patrick. He's been instrumental in helping me with my tank in the past, and a lot of the corals that I have come from him also. I do get corals from other stores, obviously, because you know you can't just shop one place. But we have a very special relationship where I take a lot of frags to him, and he supplies me with a lot of the stuff that I need. So, you know, my little system is almost like a little mini farm for him to bring stuff back, and he then in turns gives me a pick of a lot of the nice things that come in because he knows he'll get it back again.
Smart. It provides you, you know, the enjoyment of the hobby, and at the same time you've got circulation on your corals, and some other people get something out of it.
And you know, like I said, his fish goes through a specific set of things where they're treated, they're dewormed, that sort of thing, before they leave the thing. Because, for instance, I wanted to get some anthias, and he said, no, you gotta wait. You know, wait till I treat them, deworm them before you can get them. Right?
That's nice.
The other fish that I get typically, it's when from, like I said before, from friends when they shut down or something. Then I can see them. They're eating. They've been in a tank for years, so I know they're healthy.
Also, probably when people have fish that overgrow certain tanks, they know where to go and who to give the fish to. So nice. So Granny's Fanny the Reefer. So she's asked, "What's your mixture of food and name?" I believe you've already addressed that. Maybe just what's your take on the frozen food? So
frozen food is great. It's just a pain in the ass to do. I don't. To thaw it, to strain it, everything. So the fish, as you can see, they're fat, they're healthy, and they're surviving quite well on what I feed them. So, you know, occasionally they get a treat with the frozen stuff. I have it in the freezer, but, you know, it's typically if I put something in that's a little bit finicky that won't eat the flakes or the pellets, that I'll put a little frozen in.
Gotcha. Lambi Jerk. Nice. Asked, what do you keep your calcium and alkalinity at?
Alkalinity is between 8.5. It's generally around 8.5. It may go up a little bit or down a little bit, but not anywhere above or below 9. Calcium's usually in the 420 range sort of thing, maybe a little bit higher, maybe slightly lower, but I like it between 415 and 450.
Nice. And Bill Carlson has asked about your water heater as well. So maybe you can just answer a few more questions on that. So how do the two different controllers talk to the tankless heater?
They don't talk to the tankless heater. They control the circulation pump. Right. So when there's a need for heat, both have to turn on at the same time for the circulation pump to then come on to then take the hot water in, circulate it through the sump, and then back to the tankless heater. So
if there's no circulation, then the tubing gets cold, and then basically there's no heat. So, and is the heat exchanger tubing PEX? So
yes, it is. I used red PEX, and there's little 90 brackets that you can buy so that the PEX stay firm and in place, and then zip ties hold it all together, so it goes right around the sump, and it works perfectly.
So then the question is, in case I'm gonna knock as well. Let's say the heater is off. What's your plan then? Like, do you have old school heaters or? I
do have some old school heaters, electric heaters in the basement. Plus, you know, I can always jack the temperature up in the house. Right. I am an HVAC guy, so
usually
that's what I fix. So, there's the heating's not going to be off for very long.
So Dayne is redundancy himself
Yes.
on that front.
Yeah.
So these are the questions that the YouTubers have
There
asked.
was one other question.
Please.
Someone asked about the humidity from the tank.
That is right.
Right.
Yes.
I use an HRV, heat recovery ventilator, which helps a lot. It's not perfect, but what it does, it sucks the humid air from within the house and pumps it outside, and fresh air in. It helps to bring the humidity down and it also has a heat exchanger where it warms up the cold air as it's coming in, so you're not losing all that energy. So it's hooked up with the furnace, and the furnace fan is running 24/7, and with that, it's able to control it.
And do you know your humidity levels roughly?
Typically, my humidity level, it depends on how cold it is outside, right? But typically inside the house, it's about 40%.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So 40% is fairly low to begin with.
Well,
right?
40%, when it's very cold outside, your windows can condensate, so you get a bit
Right.
of condensation on the windows, but that's all part of having a big tank.
That is true. So I better check humidity in my house. I think it's closer to like 60. Nice. Those are the questions from YouTubers. Couple of quick questions from me. One is coloration of the corals. With all of your colonies, do you notice any color shifts? And if you do, can you give a few examples and maybe elaborate on why do you think this happens?
Color shifts, yes, with alkalinity definitely, and calcium. There are certain little trace elements that you can put in that helps to enhance certain colors. I'm no expert on it. I just experiment sometimes a little bit, but I think that's the main thing. Like for instance, potassium helps with the reds. All right, so I try and dose potassium to keep that up. I try and feed the corals also with powdered food, and sometimes there's liquid foods that you can use also. Oyster Feast, there is Fido, and it seems to help. But when you put a lot in, you got to take it out also. So I run carbon. I have a big skimmer, filter floss. Everything goes through filter floss. So you have to filter that, or you're going to get algae, and it's worked so far for me.
Now, what about GFO?
I don't run GFO. GFO gets stupid expensive on a big system like this.
That's true.
I use lanthanum chloride. I found that since I've taken out a lot of my sand, I don't have to use anywhere near as much as I used to. Right? In fact, I had shut it off for about a month because my phosphates had dropped to like too low.
Wow.
So even now my phosphates are a little bit low. I'm noticing some of my mushrooms and stuff are like shrinking up a little bit. So I gotta feed them more and find that sweet spot, so to speak.
That's
But the SPS loves it. That's the thing, right?
well, this is the biggest issue with mixed reef, right? I mean, you can't serve everybody, right? Everybody's needs. And actually, today I've noticed after looking at your tank, you have a few smaller urchins, but you also have probably the biggest long needle urchin I've personally seen in a tank like this, which is crowded. So, does it knock off any corals?
The big one, I've never really seen it do it. The smaller ones seem to, because they want to pick stuff up, right? Luckily, my stuff, I peg everything. So all the small frags are pegged. So it's a 1/4-inch hole with a 1/4-inch dowel that goes into each thing, and it stays fairly firmly in there. There's the occasional time that they knock stuff out, but it's rare. And this works very well for me. So in case a coral isn't doing well in that location, whether it's light, flow, whatever, too close to another coral, I can always just pull it out and stick it in another hole.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Dayne, today's session was all about Q&A. If anybody has any additional questions, feel free to write them in the comments below. If there will be, and I hope there will be a part 3. What I want to personally focus on is the inhabitants, go into every single fish, as well as talk about the individual corals, because you have such an eclectic collection of both softies and LPS and SPS, with different colorations and whatnot, and I'd like to really get deep on each one of them, but we'll leave it for the next video. So Dayne, thank you once again. Any parting words?
No, thanks guys. I'd like to thank all my friends who have helped me over the years. My buddy Carl, like I said, Patrick, some of the stores in the GTA that you know, bring in everything. Support your local livestock stores because if we don't have them, we can't get any of this. All right, guys.
Very true. So thank you.